Welcome to the Mission After podcast, where we help veterans discover and execute on the most important mission of their lives. I'm your host, Mike Bledsoe. Our guest today is Chase Tolleson, a Navy veteran who served from 2010 to 2014. Chase is a serial entrepreneur and a lifelong fitness and personal development enthusiast. Upon exiting the Navy, he opened his own gym and quickly realized that there were more important levers to pull for lasting change in fitness and mindset journeys. He now focuses on coaching individuals to unlearn and rewrite the stories in their heads, starting with the words that stories are made of. By the end of this episode, you'll discover three major takeaways. 1, the importance of belief and action in creating the life you want, and how to align your thoughts, feelings, and actions with your desired outcomes. 2, the power of words in shaping our reality and influencing our experiences and interactions. And 3, the significance of personal development, genuine coaching, and finding teachers who provide valuable insights and guidance. So before we dive in, I want to tell you about our new resource available at the Mission After website. It's called The 10 Surprising Military Habits That Are Sabotaging Your Career and Your Life. This guide will help you identify and overcome those habits. So be sure to download it at themissionafter.org. Now let's get into the conversation with Chase Tolleson. This is going to be a nerdy one today. Two guys that really love words. Really stoked to talk to you. One, Chase is on the leadership team for the Mission After, and we've had interactions in the past. I would say they've been fairly limited, less than what I desired. I was like, I want to know this guy better. And when we were putting the Mission After together, I intuitively, okay, Chase needs to be involved. And then I was sitting with David Robinson had come to town, and I told him I snagged you up for the cause, and he goes, "Dude, you got like the best guy for that." And I go, "Oh, okay. Well, my intuition was on point." And it was so good to hear other people sing your praises, because it wasn't just him. There were some other people I talked to afterwards and dropped your name, and they were like, "Oh shit, that's really special." So I appreciate you joining the team and being here and contributing to helping veterans do better in the civilian world.
I appreciate you bringing me on board, and I appreciate all those people singing my praises out there too. Dave told me about that conversation. He's like, "Man, it's the one time that I wish I had served in the military, because then I could get to be a part of that too."
Yeah. That's probably like the only time anyone's ever said, "I wish I had served." And I go, "Well, yeah, if you got to be a part of this, it's probably the good thing to come out." Most people go, "Oh, I wish I had served. Like I feel like I messed out." I'm like, yeah, probably not. I don't think anyone who served looks at people who like didn't serve and been like, "Dude, you should have done it."
Mm-hmm.
It's like obvious that whoever's there was supposed to be there, and whoever's not there wasn't supposed to be there.
100%. Yeah. My uncle, he was in the Air Force. He was a linguist back towards the end of the Cold War, and when asked about his service, he would say it was the best, worst decision of his life.
Yeah. So why did you join the Navy? Why'd you go in?
Ooh, this is an origin story kind of thing. Well, in 2008, I graduated high school 06, and I did a year of community college in 2007, and my GPA was like 0.6 something. Yeah, dude. So the next summer, I picked up a job as a storm chaser. Going around, hey, your siding could be replaced by, from hail damage by insurance. And then when I was buying a truck for that, I got a job at that dealership. So I started working at a couple of dealerships. It's like, oh no, I want to go be a pilot. Well, still in 2007, 2008, the airline industry was not all that. I would have been a third generation United pilot. I was like, well, I can work around aviation, so I'll be an air traffic controller. What's a great way to do that? The Air Force. So I started talking with the Air Force in the first half of 2008. They said, well, you can't get the clearance for air traffic controller. It's like, cool, can I be a combat controller, though? They're like, no, you can't get the clearance for that, and your eyes aren't good enough.
Can't
here,
get the
sign
clearance.
this paper.
What did you do?
I had... When I was 28, I got picked up with, as far as the Lake in the Hills, Illinois PD is concerned, I got picked up with some glass pipes with cannabis resin in them. If they had checked my buddy's stomach, they might have found some cannabis and some hash. So he may or may not have eaten that while the cop had me out of the car talking to me. So that was on my record. And also I was like 2,400 or something. I was legally blind. And the Air Force, just recruiters, right? They're guys that came back to the ship would tell me it felt like used car sales, and it sucked the soul out of them. And this guy had me sign this piece of paper, which unbeknownst to me was, hey, you're leaving when we want you to leave, and you're just going to have whatever job the Air Force wants you to have. So I managed to get out of that, went and talked to the Army. The Army said, well, we can't give you a guarantee at Ranger School because of your record. But, we can send you in 11 Bravo. So yeah, but like, I'm a testosterone-laden meathead who drives a fast Camaro. I want to go do something cool. And I went across the hallway to the Navy, and they had an EOD poster up. I was like, what about that? They're like, yeah, or like, you're in shape. You want to try and go to Buds? I said, well, I got this arrest. Like, we'll get you a waiver for that. Just go get your eyes fixed. So my second cousin at the time, retired Air Force officer or enlisted officer, he was the senior civilian at the time at the Department of Missile Defense. He was on a military channel doc back in the day about when they shot down a satellite from an Aegis destroyer. They interviewed him about it. And he got wind of this, and he sent his cousin, my mother, a book to try and dissuade me, because it was a true story of a Navy SEAL getting stuck on a mountain and being stranded until he got rescued by Army Rangers. And anybody who's seen the movie or read the book knows I'm talking about Marcus Luttrell and Lone Survivor. Dude, I read it in 72 hours, ripped through it, put the Camaro up for sale that I said I'd never sell, and paid for LASIK. I swam and I run. I would run 2 miles to the gym in under 13 minutes with a pack on my back, swim, run 2 miles back home, do push-ups and pull-ups so I was blue in the face. And then the Navy said, cool, you've had enough time. We're good on the LASIK. Let's go up to MEPS now. January 26, 2010, I go to MEPS and they say, sorry, new instruction was sent out 5 days ago. We can't waiver that misdemeanor anymore. At which point I go home, I punch things until my knuckles are bloody, and I go out and I smoke a lot of weed. And my second cousin, even though he didn't want me to be a trained hitman for Uncle Sam, as he told my parents, he handed my package to the Deputy Chief of Naval Personnel, all right, the Admiral. And this guy flips through. He's like, sorry, don't believe his story. Can't help him. Well, the story was one the recruiters told me to write so it would get pushed through faster. So at this point, I got a chip on my shoulder. I've talked with every branch except for the Marines, and I got, what I get, like a 87 or 92 on my ASVAB. I was like, I'm not going to go be a Marine. Love my Marine brothers out there. And I went back up to MEPS. I was like, get me out of town as fast as possible. And at this point, we're in late February 2010, and FAST was like 2 or 3 months at the time. Cool. You're an engineman and you leave in 9 days. Like, oh. So that's why I joined the Navy. And when I went in, they were like, oh, well, you could serve your time and rate and then drop a package and then go to Buds. So I was staying in shape. But I got sent to a MCM class, Minesweeper, billeted for 84 guys. Right? In my engine room, we at any given time had a work center soup and 2 guys under them. Well, I'm really good with a wrench in my hands. I scored like the Air Force broke it down. The the mechanical section, the Air Force told me I got like a 96 on the ASVAB in the mechanical section. So they didn't want to let me go. And they told me straight up to my face, XO would be down in the engine room. He was a car guy, small command. So you get FaceTime with the senior leadership. And he's like, hey, listen, like as much as we'd love to let you go, we won't. So you can drop the package, you can get accepted. So you can say you got accepted, but we're keeping you here. So at that point in time, Chase grew slightly disenfranchised and continued to grow disenfranchised with what at the time I saw as a broken leadership structure and advancement, and pledged to get out after 4. So that's the long story of why I joined and what happened.
I wonder how many guys joined the Navy because they wanted to be a SEAL and then ended up doing something else. I mean, that was me too.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. And then, I did go to Buds, showed up at 19 years old. Didn't realize that was actually young for that program. And well, I washed out, long story short. And then the idea is, after 2 years, you can put a package and go right back. Many of the guys that were there, it was their second time. Some of them, it was their third time. And if you do well, if you're at a command and you do well and you're not a complete shitbag, they have a really hard time letting you go.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like similar for me. Like I got out because I didn't actually get to do the thing I wanted to do, even when the initial contract was up and it was trying to re-up.
Yeah. They tried to sweeten the pot by sending me to rescue swimmer school. So I went and I made it through a week, and then I got an ear infection. Mm-hmm. And I was the current rescue swimmer was a fellow engineman. And I knew how he felt about how they ran that program on that small command, and how many times he got pulled 8 different ways during drills and evs. And I was like, cool, ear infection. Bye guys.
Yeah. So when you decided to get out, it was pretty obvious. I mean, how long were you in before you knew you were going to get out?
Oh, let's see. I entered on March 2nd. I was at my command by August or September after C school. January of 11, I'd say, less than a year. No, that's inaccurate. It was into my first deployment, so it was likely a year and a half in. I believe I got that news like our first trip to Bahrain. So,
what was it like needing to wait those 3.5 years?
Well, I set my sights on something different, and after my LCPO, he was for the bulk of when I was in. He would show up in Bahrain to quarters, coming down to the fantail with his belt missing loops and his hard hat on backwards and still half drunk, and then talk to us about standards. I had a 12-year E5 who I picked up each advancement cycle in the 97th percentile and got paid early and picked up E5 in about 3 years and like as quick as I could. I had a 12-year E5 who like technically I think I was supposed to work for him, but he worked for me because of the way things went. I would get called out of bed at 2:30 in the morning to handle something because they didn't trust him. So I decided relatively early that I wanted to go be my own boss. And I started setting my sights on that. And I was like, I'm going to open a CrossFit gym.
What year was that? That was like 14?
Yeah. I got out and I had 30 days of leave to use. So I got home in February of 14. And I drank for a little bit while I was still getting paid. And then I started looking for a space. And CrossFit had already approved the name and it had my hometown in it. And there was like one industrial section where rent was affordable enough. So I had to make do with what I found there. Fun fact for any CrossFit heads out there. Dave Castro actually waived my first year's affiliate fees because of a chance interaction with one of his buddies in a bar in Point Loma.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Dave and I, we've had the opposite type of relationship.
That's the only interaction I've had with him. So
he's come gunning for me a couple times. It's all right though, because we are living in different worlds at this point. So yeah, what was that transition like? And you were lucky in a way. Like, I mean, how many guys got out between the years of, I'd say, 2012 and 2016? It's like almost I'd say over half the CrossFit gyms out there are being run by a veteran during that time. I think it's a little different now, but there was that period. You were in that sweet spot of get out. Obviously, I'll open a gym.
Yeah. Oh, it was like off the main street. You took a turn, depending on where you come, you make a different direction. That was right turn, left turn, and then we were back at this court. And you drove into our parking lot. You had to turn around the parking lot to see us. And I still had people signing up my first month because CrossFit in 2014, we were still riding that bubble. And it was interesting, because I got out and I was like, all right, cool. Yeah, I have this space and I have this equipment. And I cashed in my, was it the TSP, Thrift Savings Plan? I cashed that in with 3 tax-free deployments worth of money in there. I'm going to be good. Until about, it had to be less than 6 weeks into my gym. And I shut down the lights one night and I pulled out a bench and I laid down on it and I knew exactly what I was doing. I was burnt out. I had been there from like 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. each day, but I had worked 36-hour days in the engine room, right? So I could do this. And I broke down. It's like all my friends are still back on the ship or at different commands. They're still in the Navy. They're in San Diego. We can go get rowdy in Pacific Beach together. Like, I'm living at home. I have a business that's bleeding money because I didn't know what I was doing, open a business, surprise. What am I doing? And that was likely the most difficult and the biggest event for me of like, did I make the right choice? And turns out I did. It took some time to really accept that though.
Yeah. How long were you out when you had that burnout phase?
Less than a year, man. Yeah, less than a year because I got out in March and that would have been September or October.
Like 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I witnessed. I imagine you did too. Just witnessed so many people get out and then come right back in. Like I remember seeing guys like, I'm gonna get out, and then I had there was one guy that came back for the same command.
Yeah.
He was out for a few months and then he was back, and I was like, what? How did? I would imagine they would at least send him to a different command, but he comes back to the command. Like, well, he was like, he was shameful in a way. What happened? He goes, it's hard out there. It's really hard out there.
I believe he was a EM1. And he had come back in. He was at the ship when I got there. He was at the command when I got there. And he's like, dude, I got out. I tried to open my own electric business. He said the same thing. It's like, man, it's hard out there though. It's so much, it's easier here. All you gotta do is show up.
Yeah. There's a thing about the challenge of being in the military. There are challenges, there are opportunities, there are things that don't exist anywhere else. Yeah. And the military holds some of the hardest things you could ever do. Like to this date, I did, I was Hell Week of Buds. Hardest thing I've ever done. Hardest thing, but, there are things that I psychologically have done that may be as difficult, but nothing where I'm physically in that place, psychologically in that place, day after day with no sleep.
Yeah.
And it doesn't prepare you. It really develops one gear. Mark England talks about this. Like Mark and I had tons of conversations. You'll probably hear Chase and I talk about Mark England. He's a guy that we both learned a lot from.
Yeah.
And he talks about, the mental toughness gear. And people in the military, the idea of mental toughness is relied on. It becomes a crutch of anytime I need to get something done and it's difficulty, I go to the gear of mental toughness.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get out into the world, there are certain things that works really well for, but there's a lot of things it doesn't work well for at all. And if you just try to bring mental toughness to every situation, it's gonna get, life is gonna suck. Like if you have to be mentally tough every day, like what kind of life is that?
I mean, the mentally tough, engine room persona that I ran had me with bruised knuckles, waking up with vomit all over the floor of my bedroom, my flat in Bahrain. And I didn't drink that often. When I did, though, because I only had one gear. Well, I only had one gear when I went out, and that gear, if I had kept that gear, I'd likely be back in. And dude, you talk about going back to the same command. I've had dreams. And it's been a bit now, probably since my daughter's been born. I've had dreams of like back at the command with the same guys, and like I'm enjoying myself, and I wake up like in a cold sweat. Like, what were you thinking?
Dude, for the longest time I had dreams about being in being at the old command, recurring dream of being at my old command, not shaving, because I so enjoy having a beard now.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've been clean shaven maybe 5 times in the last decade. And I used to have this recurring dream that I'm back in my command and I'm like, no fucking way I'm shaving this beard. And and I'm just like going on about my day, waiting for someone to say something, and then someone saying something, and then me telling them that it's not happening, and they're creating like this tension and all this. But yeah, I've had dreams of like sinking ships so many times, of being on a ship that's sinking, firefighting, just like being on a ship and knowing I'm going to be there for 6 more months on a deployment, and just rarely positive. Rarely do I have like, oh, I'm having a positive dream about my time in the Navy. But I had a really big shift in just so the dreams reduced in frequency over time, and they definitely lost the energy. So over time, and then I went to a retreat a few months ago where I had this really big release around a very specific thing that happened when I was in the Navy. It's like if I were to tell the story now, people would go, "Oh, that's obviously very traumatic."
Right.
And at the time, I had like kind of forgot about, packaged away that as, even though it was very emotionally challenging during the time, because there was no major negative repercussions for me at the end, I filed it away as not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm in this week-long retreat, and I'm like, oh, this is weird that this is coming up right now. This energy is coming up while I'm telling this story. And so I have this really big release around it. And then I come home and I start having dreams about being in, like, I would have a dream about being in the Navy, and it was like, I'm in charge of everything, and everything's good and easy and fun. And I go, holy shit. Because I've been out for 18 years.
Yeah.
For there to be 17, 18 years of nothing but negative dreams about the Navy, to like having dreams where it's like not a big deal and everything's cool, just because of this one memory that I had that I didn't think I needed to process at all, that once processed gave me a sense of relief around everything, so much so that it shows up in my dream state consistently. Pretty wild.
Very wild. And even those of us that are well versed in the work can No, I don't need to process that. And I've experienced it. I've seen it with clients. One story in particular is coming to mind with a client of mine who, like, yeah, dude, write that down. We'll get it on our next call. We're gonna 4-step it, go through the story work process, the Enlifted method, as it's coined these days, and we get it written down, and we jump on our next call, and he's like, I think I'm good. Like, writing it down was enough. I'm like, cool, just humor me. Like, let's just go through the steps, man. I get a text the next day. I woke up at 3 a.m. sweating like I was detoxing a night of drinking. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I've heard it said that our subconscious and our nervous system can have an almost autoimmune response. It's like, to try and protect us from looking at the things that will help us.
Yeah, there's two ways that people tend to look at the world: the materialist view,
Mm-hmm.
and then the more meta view of consciousness. And one is the physical world creates consciousness, and that's where consciousness arises, and that's where you'll get a lot of people who believe that AI is going to become sentient and put humans out of business, which makes sense. Like, and the way that science is taught in school is from a very materialist perspective. So no matter what your spiritual or religious background may be, the fact that the majority of the culture is living in a materialist perspective makes it very difficult to hold a different one. And the perspective from consciousness creating everything, and the material world is actually a manifestation of consciousness. Is if you do enough research, I have found way more cause, and coming from a perspective of very materialist thinking, and then over time adopting a much more consciousness-based reality perspective. I would not say that I wanted that to be true. It was, I have been shown evidence over and over and over again that would overturn what I previously believed. And when we're holding that perspective, there's also way more power over our reality when we're living from more of the consciousness-based perspective.
100%. I mean, I have a John Galt quote from Atlas Shrugged on my ribs, right? It's not that I don't suffer, it's that I know the unimportance of suffering. I know that pain is to be fought and thrown aside, not to be accepted as part of one's soul and as a permanent scar across one's view of existence. All the negations aside, like, I read Atlas Shrugged when I was 22. It's still one of my favorite books. I'm making my way through it on a second pass between smaller books right now. And yes, like, essentially what you said. Like, I'll say in a different way here. Hank Reardon, Dagny Taggart, like, they're all, material world, and there's been too many funky, it's hard to call anything a coincidence anymore. And from things like seemingly, we'll go really deep first, or really heavy for a second. When my brother passed, I was supposed to go down to Dallas, Texas with my wife because PepsiCo was trying to relocate her. We were going to go humor them and see the Plano area. So he passed on a Saturday. Our flight was on Monday. I didn't get on that flight. The guy who got my seat and sat next to my wife, he was going down to see his nephew who was in hospice and had less than 72 hours to live, and it was the only flight he could jump on. Two instances that involve our buddy Mark England, who, as much as he only talks about the words and says Mark has a way of showing up. And I think this was last year sometime when I had taken the gas off my business a little bit. I decided to put the gas pedal back down. And in the same week, Mark just decides to refer me to people. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've had that happen before, where I had it happen this week, where I chose to take on more clients of a specific type of client, and I sat down and I wrote down how I was intending to work with them. 2 referrals coming in 1 week. So it's almost identical story, right? Like
Yeah.
it was like one person came from this direction, another one came from this direction. Um, and yeah, it does seem that when you've got your mind in the right place, or what I like to call, like, when you're in alignment, the miracles happen, right? And
Mhm.
miracles happen when you're expecting miracles to happen. If you don't expect a miracle to happen, then they're not going to happen.
Yeah.
You're not creating them.
Mm. I love that you said you're not creating them, because what I was going to say is, if you expect them to happen, you're likely also taking some action to help them happen, to seize that opportunity that's laid in front of you. I believe, you're familiar with is it a parable from the Bible? Or it's a story of God sent a boat, right? The guy that lived on the river, and the town was flooding. And he's like, come on, we'll get you out of here. No, God's going to save me. So the car pulls off, and then the river's flooding, and somebody comes by in a boat. It's like, come on, we'll get you out of here. No, God will save me. Then he's up on his roof, and somebody comes by in a helicopter. He's like, no, God's going to save me. He gets up to heaven. And he's like, God, what the heck? It's like, well, I sent you 3 opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a client a while back who was he's a new Christian, so less than a year old in that lineage, whatever you want to call it, and I loved it. I loved working with somebody who is newly Christian, and because I have a very deep background in theology. Well, I want not compared to like a preacher. I don't have a deep background, but to the average person, like I can sit down with people who went to college to be to seminary or something. We can jam philosophically and start pulling out Bible verses. This happened a few months recently with and my fiance sitting there going, I had no idea you know so much about the Bible. Yeah, childhood. My parents put it in, that was required reading. But I was working with this client, and he was he went into a deep meditative experience. And in this deep meditative experience that I helped him achieve, he comes out and he goes, "Oh, I just need to I need to listen to God more." And we're talking about listening to God. And I asked him, where is God? And he's a bit confused. And I was like, could God be God is love? The Bible says God is love. Oh yeah. Yeah. God is the Word, and the Word is God. Okay. And words do create our reality, and is God in everything? And does it work? Does He work through all people? Well, yeah, of course. Yeah, God is all these things. It's like, okay, I have not once gone against what the Bible says.
Right.
And so, could it be possible? Oh, the conversation was about asking for help. I need to ask God for help more. Was the conversation? I go, you can ask me for help. He goes, well, I want to ask God for help. I was like, is God not in me? He goes, well, of course God is in you. I go, I'm here to help you. Like, asking for help from people around you is asking God for help.
Yes.
For you to sit there in a room in isolation and go, please help me, please help me, please help me, and then to never go out and request help from a being which God created and is living through in every moment, you just cut yourself off.
100%, and that's a beautiful example of, an older faith in representing that. And I've seen it like in more new age circles too, the whole, manifestation and, well, I'm just going to manifest my dream life. Like, cool. And like, what if you took a little action to help all that meditation and vision board? I'm all for aiming the reticular activating system. And like you said, like words create our reality. If everything is vibration, spoiler alert, I'm pretty sure it is. And sound is vibration and words are sound, then the words we use and the intonation with which we use them is a little bit important.
Yeah, Dispenza talks about the feeling coming, like,
yeah,
he talked about what was that old documentary they put out, it was really popular,
with Dispenza, or
he was part of it. Maybe something code, I forget. Choose to remember.
I'm drawing a blank.
So he was like, yeah, did really good. We were talking about you create your reality by how you perceive the world and what you project out into the world and through your mind. But we really didn't talk about, and I think he addressed it in one of his books, the feeling your feeling world has to come. He doesn't say feeling world, that's my word. But like your feeling world has to go along with the vision of the future. We actually do this in the mission after. It's I just put together one of the last weeks of the curriculum, and we get into this. How do we fine tune what's going on in your body, where the subconscious lives, to get it to agree with this vision, these words that we're speaking? And it's let's see if I can remember where I was going with that. I mean, I lost track.
We're talking about words and vibration and feeling, and words. I said words and intonation are paramount because everything is vibration.
Yeah, there's something before that. All right, we'll just keep rolling. Yes. Yeah. Look, everything comes down to vibration. There was is it Howard Terrence was just on Rogan? I don't know if you watched that.
I have yet to watch it.
Dude.
Yeah.
It cannot be overstated. But he was talking about how everything goes down to frequency, like basically everything to vibration and sound. Light becomes sound when it's a certain frequency and all this stuff, and then everything that's in the periodic table is actually just a frequency. And the way he lays it out, it's dense. It's really dense. As he lays it out, my brain is unlocking in all sorts of different ways. And I think it was just a really good example of somebody going, oh, this all comes down to vibration. Like you were saying, the intonation, the vibration of you speaking it. What I was going to say is it comes down to, got to get your feeling world. You create the vision and get your feeling world to come along with it. Okay, if my heart cares about it, if I get my mind to agree with it, and then I get my subconscious mind that lives in my body to agree with it as well, well, that's belief. I now believe it. And if I'm believing it, the person who does the vision board, like you were talking about, the person who does the vision board and believes it, what do? They actually go out and start acting like it's already true, and the actions follow. But for the person who does the vision board but doesn't actually believe it, they haven't tuned their subconscious, their body, to be on board with this vision board. Now it's just a vision board in the corner, and it doesn't work because they don't believe it enough to be out there taking the actions, which changes the frequency of the rest of the universe.
That's so paramount. I think I brought this up on a mission after call. Mark Gaffney, and the episode is it's on Luke Story's Lifestylist podcast. About 30 minutes in, he gives a beautiful deep dive into the word abracadabra. Because you and I know that abracadabra is with my word I create, with my word I influence, comes from Aramaic. I have it tattooed on my back in Hebrew because I couldn't find anybody to confirm Aramaic, and I'd rather get a language that's accurate. And
good idea. You don't want to be that guy.
Exactly. So he talks about in there that and if you guys want to hear this explained better after you get done with this episode, cue that one up next. And
Yeah, Luke Story's a personal friend here in Austin now.
I'm sure.
Both escaped SoCal.
But Mark says in there that one symbol in abracadabra stands for word, and then there's another one that stands for silence. So what we're talking about here, the feeling aligning, when abracadabra, the word can either uphold the silence or betray the silence. And when the words uphold the silence, that's when abracadabra, with my word I create, with my word I influence, holds its magic.
Mm-hmm. I want to get back into your story now.
All right.
I love this. We're gonna do a little bit of story and then veer off.
Yeah.
Come back.
That's my style.
So you open a CrossFit gym. You're like, what the fuck have I done? Now we're having a conversation. You're part of the mission after. You're doing bigger things, which I'm sure I covered in the intro. Tell my future self to do that now. And then but at one point you're in the gym. You're a CrossFit gym bro who's burning at both ends.
Yeah, dude. I mean, full on knee socks, board shorts, following outlaw programming for 90 minutes a day, 5 days a week, and still trying to run a business and not knowing what I'm doing running a business either. And I had a couple of coaches that were coaching on trade for me, but then one had an opportunity to open up his own spot, and so next thing you know, I'm down to one coach. Then I brought a guy in who was coach for me. It was just
classic. I can do it better.
yeah, 100%. Side note: as I opened my second location 4 years after I opened, as we moved into a second location, my members that would travel would be like, "Hey, the only nicer gym I've been to is Max Effort in Vegas." And all that aside, 2014 to probably 2016, even 2017, we were CrossFit. I opened in 2014. I was like, we're going to get a regionals team together and we're going to go to regionals. And I realized that there was parents and grandparents and people with mortgages and lives that just want to feel good about themselves again. And fitness was the way they were doing that. And then, on my personal journey, about 2017, I was it started, Marcus Philly was really popular doing the functional bodybuilding thing. And he was affiliated with OPEX and James Fitzgerald. And so back up a little bit, 2016, I had a blog, and I was writing that blog because one of my members was like, you ought to write a blog. You say a lot of good stuff in here, good mindset stuff. 2017, I listened to an episode in I believe it was January 2017, if I remember Mark quoting it correctly, of Mark England on Barbell Shrugged. And then I really started going deep. I listened to that one when it dropped and used the code and went through core language upgrade twice back to back. My wife didn't want to watch it because Mark. She said Mark had beady little eyes. He's
got that hard to trust face.
She'll admit this. It took her a year and a half to start working out at my gym as opposed to the one that was on the way home from work. It's been an evolution. Even still, when I bring something to the table, if she hears it in a podcast a week later that it's valuable, it's still easier to land. And
oh my gosh. Yeah. I totally get it. I've got so many tools that I've offered to share with my fiance, and then years of hanging out for it to sink in.
Yeah.
Same way too. I'm sure there's things she tried to tell me about where I'm like, all right, I'll finally read that book.
There's 100 more so. Sarah's intuition on people has been correct before mine in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of the coaches at the gym, she's like, I told you, he left and he took 20 members with him. It's yeah, you're right. And he's going through a tough time, and I thought we were doing the right thing. So
right.
Love her.
Listen to your woman.
Listen to your woman, guys. And like when she comes around, she sent me an Instagram post today, and she's like, "I love you, thank you," and I think I get to do more journaling now because there's some posts that highlighted some stuff, and I'm like, cool, awesome. But yeah, 2018 I took the OPEX CCP, and the first 6 months of 2018 went out to Arizona.
What's the CCP?
Is it their certified coach program? I think that's their.
I don't know.
I think that's their program. OPEX's. I may have it off because it's been six years now, and
yeah, I did some of their stuff real early, like 2012, 13, 14, somewhere in there.
Yeah, it was a 6-month cohort, and I in May of 18 I was out in Scottsdale for a weekend, got a in-person weekend, listening to James Fitzgerald talk about program design, which 2018 Chase just ate up, and then we're like, everybody needs individual attention, and group class is broken, and everything has its purpose in this world, right? But I took a real hard line on this, and we opened a second location, or we moved into a bigger location, and there was room for an individual design floor and the group floor. Well, now all my group members were angry at me because the individual design people had a nice yoke. I don't have space or money for 12 yokes for the whole class to use, or even 3 to rotate them. So sorry. And with the OPEX for me is the first time I can remember, like in a coaching space, them saying, hey, each one of your clients is seeing the world through a different lens. And if you can wrap your mind around that on the consult, you're going to have a lot easier time serving them. And even with all the mindset stuff that it helped to break down a thin wall that was between me and like, hey, this is mindset and these are words and this is why. And everybody's looking at it from a different angle. And that really helped. And from there, we were in the second location. I started standing up a team, and 2019 we had a solid team. We went through Active Life RX Pro Path, and Sean actually had me on a YouTube live because we were one of the first gyms to like really do some stuff with that program. And then 2020 hit. We had our best. You want to know when we had our best month ever?
February 2020.
March 2020 on a
March
partial
2020.
month. We had our best month. We were steamrolling on intake. And then we lost like half of those enrollments, probably 3/4 of those new enrollments, because they didn't have the trust built or know us enough. So as soon as old JB Pritzker shut Illinois down for 2 weeks, aka 2 months, we lost them. We opened back up, and we shifted to a more semi-custom program, and it went well. And we already had a podcast going. And on that podcast, we had late summer, fall of 2020, we had Angelo Cisco. And then on that one with Angelo, we were talking about just vocabulary came up. He's like, oh, yeah, I know Mark. Yeah, look at this picture of us partying in like Belarus or somewhere, right? Like they're both wearing tracksuits over in Europe somewhere. And he's like, you want Mark on the podcast? Yeah, cool. And at this point, Mark wasn't talking about Enlifted yet. Like he was talking about words and stories and their power.
We started Enlifted in 2018.
It had been started, and it took. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it was started, and then I was a part of that for like from 2018 to maybe mid 2019 for about 1 year. I was there to like ship, because I go, oh, this is a brand that like needs to. I like the product, but the marketing needs to be upgraded, and part of that is the brand. And I did not come up with the name, by the way, but the overall like how the approach to the customers.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really cool to, even though I stepped away, like those guys just kept pushing and lifting forward in the direction it needed to go.
Yeah. And on that podcast, Mark, we get to the end of it. And I'm like, hey, what's this Enlifted thing that I see your name on too? Like, you're on the vocabulary website. What's this over here? He's like, oh, actually, let's you and I get on a call. You got time after this podcast? And at that point, level 1, group 9 had their kickoff introductory call. He's like, hey, we got this one rolling. You can, like, all we did was introduce everybody to each other. You can jump in on week 2. And so I level 1, group 9, I think they just graduated group 42. Got in on group 9. I was level 2, group 3, level 3, group 2, all back to back to back. And we implemented it at the gym. Everybody who came in got a goal setting session that turned into a story work session. I took it into my online business.
Tell everybody what Enlifted is and how it works.
Yeah. I forget that we got other people listening. Yeah.
Yeah. There's
you and I sit here shooting the shit and
Enlifted's a certification. I'll give like big picture. It's a certification. It's an educational program on how to work with the mind. Yep. The reason I got behind it really early on is because I saw how powerful it was and how powerful it is. And one of the things that makes it powerful over other language programs, like you may have heard of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, it's more powerful than NLP. And for the one reason is that it's far simpler and just as effective. There are layers and levels to this. And when you get down to the core, which Enlifted gets really down to the core of language, when you get that deep, all those other things that are at the surface that you might find at NLP just unravel. You're like, that's just taken care of. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is used by therapists all around. It's got 21, 22 different principles in CBT, the core principles. Well, guess what? I've studied all those core principles, and every one of them is handled by the core of what Enlifted does. So it seems so simple that it's easy to overlook until you put it to use in your own life. And then it's like, oh, what the fuck? So I just wanted to give that broad strokes, and then I'll let you fill in whatever the actual details of what it is.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we've talked about, with my word I create, abracadabra, and Enlifted looks at the mechanisms of, the Enlifted definition of mindset is a story we tell ourselves about ourselves. And the mechanism in that story is the words and the breath. So for Enlifted, we're looking at the words we're using day to day and the words we've been using and the stories that have been constructed, maybe about our past, about the future, about our present, or about our past, and using like you said, a surprisingly simple and yet very effective methodology to go in and unravel those stories. I said it at a workshop that I ran back in January. A lot of people are wearing a torn and tattered sweater of stories that don't serve them. And when you pull on one thread, you just take a look at one story. Sooner or later, if you keep going, you unravel that whole sweater and you get to knit it back into something that you want to wear. And you could start with something, great example, somebody from my gym, she looks at me, she's like, hey, I think I need a Chase psychology session. It's like, I don't think we can legally call it that. And yeah, let's sit down. What do you want to talk about? She wanted to talk about nutrition. She was snacking all the time. It's like, cool, let's start in the present. And we wrote that story down. At night, when I know I shouldn't be snacking, I still went for the chocolate and I ate the whole bar and whatever. It's longer than that. And we read that story out loud. And we read it slower. And then we read it with a breath at every natural break. And while we were reading that, we were checking in each time. Okay, what do you feel? What emotion is coming up? What do you feel in your body? What's present for you? 1 to 10, how strong is it? What does that remind you of? And the amount of times I've seen this look, poof, oh, I didn't know that was in there. She goes, oh, when I was 12 years old, my mom pressured me to have a certain body type for cheerleading. And then we went in and we ran the same process for that story. And I forget exactly how we worked that story. We did those 4 steps. The cool thing about Enlifted, talk about, and this, I tucked this away from when we got to the process. When we talked earlier about words and feelings lining up. When we take a story like our parents pressuring us to have a certain body type, or to go to college because they want us to have the degree, or our mom coming after us with a knife in the kitchen, or whatever it is. All stories I've heard, and I've heard more benign and much more gnarly. When we can go to the sentence or a sentence in that story that holds emotional power, that seems to have a hold on us and our energy, and we can read that one, take a big deep breath until it might have some hold. Cool, now we've aired that one out. And we just switch one word, switch it one word at a time. And my favorite thing to do is, before we know it, we had a sentence that was like holding us back, and now we've crafted an affirmation out of it. And when you take the energy and you move it nice and slow and gradually like that, now instead of scrolling Pinterest for an affirmation to put up on your wall, you have something to write on your bathroom mirror that came from a story that was holding you back, that you didn't even know was holding you back.
Yeah, the one word game, changing one word at a time. There's 2 ways to approach creating those affirmations that I found to be really effective. One is the one word game, which makes sense from a biological perspective, where we can't just yank the neuron from over here and place it over here. So we do one word at a time. It starts to loosen up. The idea of it starts loosening up. Your ego kind of starts letting go. And then you get to slowly and gently place it on a new track.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one way to do it, I think. And then following that is repetition. That's how we learn, is through repetition. And then the other way I found that's been really effective, which I discovered post Enlifted, is creating a statement that is so much more powerful than the statement that was holding you back. Which calling on a power beyond yourself. It becomes a much more spiritual conversation. I think the one word game is very good for those who want to. For most people, there's a little skepticism. They're not quite sure. I don't know how this works. Yeah. And then there's another layer of like, just I'm gonna make a statement that is so that they don't even sound alike. This one sounds so much more powerful that if I simply repeat this over and over again, even if it doesn't feel true right now, it makes this one that was holding me back just seem ridiculous. I love it. And taking something that was holding you back and transforming it into something better is way better than, like you were saying, picking out some mantra off of Pinterest.
Yeah.
That may not really be related to anything that's going to help you out right now.
No. You said, those affirmations can come from something bigger. And the one time I saw Mark say this was in Austin. He's like, we're in Austin. I can talk about it this way. This stuff has an energy of its own, and I just go where it takes me. And I've been on calls with clients. There's like, sometimes they're like, how'd you know that that's what I needed to see on the Google Doc? My hands just started moving. Mm-hmm. There's one time in particular that's coming up right now that we're talking about his late father. And like, well, what do you think he would want to say to you right now? I mean, I'm getting full body chills talking about this. everything that he said, I heard in my head before he said.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Um, it's really easy to get lost in the sauce with, like you said, Enlifted makes it simple. And it can be so easy to get lost in the sauce with the seeking and this and that. And that stuff can be fun. Like I'm sure there's valuable pieces in everything. And like I worked 14 weeks one-on-one with an intuitive mentor in 2022 to hone my skills. Because in a past lives reading, she said I spent time as an ageless monk at a monastery only for the chosen. I was also apparently a famous philosopher in the toga days. But when she was recapping the monk lifetime, Mike, I cried spontaneously twice.
Mm.
Like I was remembering something I didn't know I missed. And I was like, hey, if my soul has been there before, can we work together? I see you do one-to-one. And when I worked with her, things would happen like she would, when we were starting, she would give me names of, unbeknownst to me on the session, it was kids because they're easier to read. Like, well, what's a food that excites them? What's their favorite place to go? And I did well. And then there was one where like I got this vivid flash of a cup of chocolate ice cream and rainbow sprinkles. And I was like, ice cream, chocolate with rainbow sprinkles. And she's like, I had to like bite my tongue because that was my son. And that's exactly what he gets when we go out.
Mm.
We had a woman on, I was doing a reading on her. My mentor, Krishanti, was on. And it's like, I feel like you're standing at the top of a waterfall and it's like you're waiting to jump. And I'm getting the sense that it's time to jump. And this woman, for some reason, had decided, and she was in the middle of building a model of a waterfall in her living room. So I've waded into deep waters. I've had psilocybin, LSD, 5-MeO experiences. I keep coming back to the words.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Makes things solid.
Yeah.
Makes things solid.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing I like about the psychedelics is that's how I think about the development of consciousness. I've heard so many different ways of people thinking of how it works, and I'm talking about the consciousness of an individual human being.
Mm-hmm.
Is the before the age of 5, 6, 7 years old, I ask people, what's your first language? And they go, oh, it's English or Spanish or whoever I'm talking to. I go, no, it's energy. It's emotion. We break down emotion. We break it down into its etymology in Latin. Yeah, emotere is where emotion comes from. Emotere is energy in motion.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start, looking around the more alternative, quote unquote alternative, original health world.
Good switch.
Yeah, the original health world. You may hear some people talk about energy, and I go, if you hear that, just translate it into emotion. Emotion is energy in motion, and that's how you communicated. That was your first language, and everybody is speaking with their energy all the time. It's dictating how people move. It's dictating the tone of voice. It's dictating. You could change the actual words you're using, but the tone and the frequency and all that's going to tell the story. And so, which will also dictate can dictate what's happening in the mind, and does for most people. And so, this is your first language, and the thing that most people don't think about is that you develop energetic patterns. You develop emotional patterns before you have language patterns. So if you look at most of psychology, modern psychology is mapped primarily off of cognitive patterns, not emotional patterns. It's cognitively based first. But and if you're in talk therapy, all you can do is cognitive. You actually, that modality is not built to work in the emotion. Emotions may emerge, they definitely will, but that doesn't mean you're working with them. And so these energetic patterns are laid down. And sometimes if you're under stress, your energy is going to run like a river differently in your body than in my body, right?
Yeah.
And so we have different patterns, and those are grooved just like cognitive patterns are grooved. And then you start layering on language, and we learn words in a different order, and they mean different things, and they attach to the foundation of energy in different ways. And your pattern is different than my pattern, and then I've got a different cognitive pattern that's not. Holy fucking shit! We're all snow, like everyone really is a snowflake in that way, right?
Yeah.
And that to going back to your realization in the gym, when someone comes in, they're experiencing the world. They see the world in a completely different way than you. It's impossible that they don't. They have to see the world differently because their energetic patterns are different. Their cognitive patterns are different. And then you're laying that on top. And what I like about this psychedelic work and then also somatic work is you rearrange the chairs on the energetic level, and then the cognitive patterns have to find a new place. They have to go somewhere. And this is why it's important. This is the conversation of integration from a psychedelic experience is, well, how are we going to rearrange the words? You know, you're standing in a place of new choice. Where are we going to put them? And if we don't, if you're working with the old words still, that will have an impact on the energy. It's not a one-way flow. It's not energy is having an impact on just the mind, and the mind is also has an impact there. So you both are important, and the words are absolutely necessary.
Yeah, you know, I'm glad you extrapolated on that, because sometimes when I make that point, it can seem like I'm brushing off some of that stuff. And I became much more receptive to the words, to my stories via psychedelics. Clients who I've worked with who just start a microdosing protocol, much less like if they decide to go and have their own full experience. Big shifts. You know, I think it was my third 5-MeO experience that I lay down on the ground and at this point, it was my third experience, right? And it was less of a ceremony and more of a, yeah, man, let's do it. And I'm so there's somebody made a run for 2-inch steaks from the local shop, and I get handed the number 4, 5, and 6 pen. It's like, you're gonna hit 4, you're gonna rip 5, you're gonna rip 6, all in a row. You're gonna hold your breath, and I'll see you on the other side. And I mean, my second experience, I went to 6, and I disintegrated into a rainbow river of source consciousness, is how I would describe it. This experience, though, I was plugged into the power grid. And like the whole time I was on my back, reaching for the sky, just, and while I'm out there, I'm thinking, this is the force. This is what we use. This is the thing to tap into. This is power. This is like the ultimate power. And then as I come back down, my arms drop to my side. I'm just kind of like intuitively scooping. I mean, you can see I'm scooping into my chest. And I just get overcome with this feeling of bliss and gratitude. And I realized that thing, that supernova, that power station that I was standing in out there was love. You know, so yeah, energy, emotion, 100%, super vital. And any work like psychedelics or somatic work that helps to tap on that and get that rearranged, plus solid integration work, like looking at the words and the mechanisms, that's a recipe I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, and there's not that many people with that recipe. they're usually good with one or the other. Very rare to find someone who can hold both. That's why we're here. And you don't have to do psychedelics. There's a lot of somatic therapies out there. I'm about to go, and next month I'm going to go to this retreat. It'll be the third time in a year where it's language, body language, and somatics all built into one week-long retreat. And holy shit, it's effective. It's effective. I'm going to be putting together I think they can only, the biggest group I've been a part of out of the 2 times I've been there so far is 6 people. So for the week, so I'll probably be putting together, let's put the word out there right now. I'm talking to them about doing a veterans only program retreat at the beginning of November over Veterans Day holiday. I think that would be the best way to celebrate that. So just put it on people's radar. I may put a call out for that if you want to make sure you're in on that. You need to be on the email list, which means you've been over to the website and you've clicked the buttons and opted into the email and said you're good with me sending you emails, and you probably replied to an email I sent you. So that's how you ensure you get invited to the coolest things ever.
The coolest things ever. I mean, one of the coolest things ever is the weekly calls too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So much of my coaching has improved from those retreats I was just talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
She learned from the guy, conscious language guy. That I think Mark spent some time with as well.
Yeah. I know, and like I've had conversations with Mark, and I have an episode on my podcast that I had of like him telling all the teachers he spent time with, and I'm still, it's locked away in the recesses. We'll see if my subconscious can find it while we're talking.
There are some amazing teachers out there. They're usually very terrible at marketing themselves, and they can be savant-like, in that you look at them and they might be a little messy or they may seem a little off. But I can tell you, because in 2012 I started podcasting and fitness, and I realized several years in that the smartest people are really quirky. Like the true geniuses are a bit quirky. So don't judge a book by that. But if they have a very specific skill set, even though they may not be paying attention to other things in their life, they're very good at this one thing. And so I've run across several of those. I would put Mark in that category.
Yes.
He is different. Some of the people he's learned from are different. And this woman that I train with here in Texas, Faith is her name. She is also very different. And they've all, been learning from each other over time. They've always been in the background. These are not people you're going to find in academia. They will not have reached tenure in the psychology department at a university. It's not happening. But they hold some really great wisdom. And I imagine that give Chase and I 20 years and we'll probably be those quirky, weird dudes as well, standing on the shoulders of giants.
I'm here for it.
And just letting people know, like, the good stuff is not always the easiest to find. You're not going to walk into the VA office and say, I need help, and they're going to send you to Faith at this little farm in the middle of nowhere, Texas.
I learned early on with my gym that a lot of the most successful people in fitness were the best sales and marketing people. They were not necessarily the best coaches, or the most knowledgeable, or the people who even cared the most about their people. And sales and marketing was, I mean, that's something that had the pleasure of learning, and I'm still refining it over the last decade. And it's a fun skill to learn.
You know, just to give everyone an idea of how the world works in regard to these things is the best customer that you could get. If we're just talking about business and the numbers, the best customer you can get is you make a sale one time. You make that sale one time and you got that contract, and then they bring you 100,000 clients and everything's just paid through that whatever system they have, and you just sell one time, right?
Yep.
Now, if you're a coach in the original health space, like Chase and I, usually we have to sell to every individual customer, and which means that every time we serve somebody, there has to be a sales process that every person goes through, and they have to voluntarily agree, and they have to think about and be introduced to the ideas that are being presented and so forth. But if all you wanted was money, you would go find one company that you would sell to. You would sell it once, and then they would just hand you customers and money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're getting at the VA.
Yeah.
I love the VA. There's a lot of great things happening there, but know what you're getting. Somebody in that bureaucratic organization was sold something to do it this way, to use this prescription, to use this machine, to do whatever. And now that's what you're going to have access to for free. It's being paid for. It was already sold. It's already been bought and sold and paid for. But if you want to get something for yourself, there are some really great things at the VA. And if you really want to take charge of your own shit, you gotta have to go beyond that, go further.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd imagine any veterans listening know that mil spec is not what it's cracked up to be. Yeah. And at the VA, you're getting mil spec healthcare. It's the nature of the beast. And I prefer, one of my hobbies that I'm getting back into is building that 88 Camaro that I sold because I found it again when I was in my barracks in San Diego on a Friday night, laid up with my ankle in a boot, drinking a fifth of Jack to myself, feeling sorry. And my dad called me on Monday and said, "Hey, you owe me $4,800. Your car's in my garage." So I still have it, and I'm building it again. And I could get stuff that's like, it's not mil spec car parts, right? But I could get stuff on that grade, or I could get really nice stuff. For my ARs, I could get mil spec triggers, or I could get Geisley triggers. I prefer Geisley.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Nice. All right, Chase. Let's. I got a feeling Chase is going to be a regular on the show. You have your own podcast. You're also running your own business. Feel free to let people know where to find you.
Yeah, so the podcast is in the middle of a rebrand as the business shifted gears this year. So search up Chase Tolleson. ChaseTolleson.com is the website, at coach_Chase_Tolleson on Instagram. Right now the business is, I for the longest time resisted all my past lifestyle clients coming to me and say, "Hey, how'd you build this?" And I realized that resistance was because I saw an opportunity in the market, because I could see what a lot of others had an opportunity to capitalize on, a lot of the really good marketers who weren't necessarily serving. So I started taking people on and they started seeing results. So helping people build businesses, helping coaches build businesses that actually thrive. And that's what I've got going on, where you can find me. And part of the reason that I do that, part of the thing that makes me comfortable doing that, I'll say, is I'm also in business acquisition. I tripped, fell, and landed into that because I kept listening to the opportunities that God, source, universe, energy sent me. And I don't necessarily need to coach. I love it. I love it. So that's where you can find me.
Right on. And you'll be able to find Chase inside the Mission After, where we're coaching vets to get better. What that's a really vague comment from me. What do you, we're in the beta of the Mission After. We're coming up on next week. It'll be 3 months deep into the beta program. What do you see has happened in the last 3 months for the veterans that have been involved?
From the other side of the Zoom screen, I see things that I notice. Body language shifts. Guys are more open to sharing. And what all of that says to me is, and their shares are more aware of what's going on in their lives and how they're operating. And I know when I left, like that meltdown I had in my gym and even how I would run my team, there were patterns that weren't serving me. And we could hold on to those for longer than some of us care to admit. And I've seen these guys become aware of those. And even if they were previously unaware of them, and start shifting them, and some of them fully shift these. And it's super cool because the doors that have opened for some of these guys and the opportunities that they've started seizing in their own life, it's rad.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Progress is made in 2.5 months. And the results, it's always cool because we make a 1% shift now and then fast forward 2-3 years and holy shit. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the results are over that time. Chase, thanks for hopping on with me. This has been fantastic. Love you, brother. And we'll see y'all next time.
Yes, sir. Love you, man.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Mission After. Before we wrap up, I want to remind you about our free resource, the 10 surprising military habits that are sabotaging your career and your life. This guide is packed with valuable insights to help you overcome common challenges faced by veterans transitioning to civilian life. Don't miss out on this opportunity to take control of your career and life. Head over to themissionafter.org to download your copy now. It's completely free and could be the game changer you're looking for. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your fellow veterans and friends. Your support helps us reach more people and make a bigger impact. Until next time, stay curious, stay intentional, and remember, your mission after service is just beginning.